Couple of friends recently, names withheld obviously, and one of the ladies told me, so imagine if we are both tired in the evening after a long day at the office and he still expects me to go to the kitchen. This conversation had me thinking, should we rethink the whole traditional wife and husband roles in this modern day era? Keith Nyambane, the lead steward at STARTIMES, as well as Jane Gitau, a counseling psychologist, join us for this conversation, and that is actually our question of the day for you. Should we rethink the traditional roles of man and wife? What do you think? Our phone numbers are open, 0795 045 864. So tafuta credit sahi and call us live. You can also text us on WhatsApp, 0793 267 279. 22047 is our SMS number. We'll be sampling of them as we continue. In case you feel like you have some questions and a number of questions, throw them in. Nyambane as well as Gitau will be answering them for you. In case you have a whole experience, umefika kwa nyumba jioni and probably the wife is saying, no, I'm not going to the kitchen. Or probably as a woman, the man really insists that you should really cook. Should we rethink the whole traditional roles of this? I'll let them introduce themselves more. And it's like saying everyone always has more on their plates. So I'll start with you, Gitau. Not a new face to this panel, of course.
Yeah, so my name is Jane Gitau. I am a counseling psychologist and a certified mediator. I practice here in Nairobi at Egypt House, and I also have a branch in Naivasha at Equator House.
Right, fantastic.
Yep.
How about you, Keith?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Keith Nyambane from STARTIMES, an organization that is focused on empowering young people to become the best version of themselves through programs that initiate personal growth. And that's why this conversation is important to us, because marriage demands such conversations to happen for you to succeed in them.
Right.
Yes.
And speaking of which, I always, every single Wednesday, before we start this whole conversation on relationships, I always like picking up a proverb from around Africa and just analyzing with the help of my panelists this morning. And for today's proverb comes from Zulu. It's a Zulu proverb. And it says, getting married is like putting a snake in your pocket. Getting married is like putting a snake in your pocket. Gita, what do you make of that?
Well, it is, I would probably say that I support it in the sense that marriage, you're picking this girl, you're getting this man, and you're bringing them into your life. You don't know who really they are, meaning that if you rattle it, it can either bite you or probably just walk away. So, kinda it is.
Right. Yeah, but I'm seeing you trying to really think about it.
Kitakuramba. You look courageous while doing it, but if you didn't have insight on what a snake is, then your predicament will be based on that ignorance. So marriage is not for the ignorant. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And now to really understand, because a man and a woman are two different people. They all think differently. As much as at the end of the day, when you're doing some of these roles, you'd want to be at par and on the same page. But each of them really think differently. Is that right, Gitau? Help us understand, first of all, before we get deeply, understanding the whole roles of each. What is the psychology of a man as well as a woman when it comes to in the setup of marriage?
Yeah, you look at a man from the masculinity point of view. And a man or human being basically has a capacity and the ability to be somebody, to become or actualize their full potential, even without anybody's support, naturally. That's why we talk about nature and nurture. There is like even a tree in the forest, nobody nurture them, and somehow they just grow. Animals, nobody tell you you're a male or you're a female, and they know. Lions know, the lioness know that I'm a lioness, and So basically, human beings have the potential of being who they're supposed to be, without necessarily. You'll see like a boy, a girl and a boy, even if they were twins. A boy will go toward this direction, while a girl, you find her going toward cooking and all that. The boy wants cars and all those things. So basically, as much as we talk about the multicultural, because you see, when it comes to different tribes, there's a way men are expected to behave, there's a way women are expected to behave, and so is across the multicultural whatever society. And that is where actually you realize that we are having confusion today, because here you are, laws are socialized in a certain manner, that a man is supposed to behave in a certain way. Maasai, the women, build the house, I don't know, they do this and that. So I don't understand really. Here I am, a Kikuyu. I don't know how Maasai women really are socialized to do, but I get married there. So this man come with expectations of the way he was socialized, you know, because we were socialized, both of us, brother and sister, both Maasai. And here I am, Kikuyu, now getting married to these Luos or Maasai. And of course, there are these expectations that comes in, and they bring in a lot of confusion.
Right. Yeah. And Keith, when you take a look at how she really, you know, puts it, when you're growing up, even as a boy, you'd really be inclined to particular things, really, and liking, you know, Manchester United and Cristiano Ronaldo, and such kind of conversations because you're a boy, and the boys around you are doing that. And if, in case you're a girl, you'd be inclined to, you know, prefer dolls and all that. And even as for a boy, you're told, be a man, you know, young man. You're probably 10 years and your father's there calling you, young man, come, because this man is trying to, you know, train you to become that. If you're a lady, you're being told, be a lady and act like a lady. But then now, all the way until you actually get into that marriage institution, how does a man know that you're actually a man in that house? And vice versa, even for the woman. How does she know that she's actually the woman in this house?
Thank you for that question. Bringing it up, connecting to what she said, the socialization bit. I work with a lot of children, and some of the things I get to tell their parents is, you can only teach what you consistently model.
Yeah.
And so, growing up, we saw a lot of modeling happen, both gender. The divorce rates back then wasn't as high, and that we'll get into that conversation. Yeah. So we grew up seeing our fathers take responsibility, pay the bills, fight for the family, close the gates, fix the tires, and all those things. And with that, we were able to tell that this is what a man does. Over and above the things they tell us, we used to see it. Now, having worked in the school space, I ran a music academy. There's something called the feminization of the boy child, where the fathers are slowly being replaced by their mother models. Who's the teacher in preschool? The majority are ladies. Because
I remember, even I think growing up, a number of the class teachers were female.
Yes.
And kind of the closest persons there were female teachers.
And so a good percentage are female. Go to Sunday school. Who are the teachers? Mostly ladies. The PPI programs, who are the people who volunteer the most? They're ladies. And so while the girl child is growing up seeing models of what it means to be a lady, the boys are now growing up with the absence of that model to emulate from. And therefore, you get to see a lot of boys or young men who want to be pretty.
So basically, even in your bit, this boy lacks men around him telling him, be a man.
Yes.
And this is, even just without even being told, this boy doesn't get to see how being a man really is.
Yes. So, like we did, seeing our fathers do it and ask us to do the same, it was much easier to become a man. Now, with the absence of male figures to model and also call it out, you can see that young men are generally leaning towards become more feminine than they are masculine. And why that's an issue, it's because it's been said that the curse of femininity is being insecure, and the curse of masculinity is being passive. And therefore, when you grow up not seeing a man model it, by your default setting, you become a very passive person. And therefore, going back to your relationship or the conversation you're having, a lady says, there's no way the both of us could have gone to work and then I come to the house and you expect me to cook. And so you begin to see that the passivity is not really working for our generation, mainly because among many other things, the lack of modeling and mentorship and the passing on of the baton of what it means to be a man. I normally say that masculinity is bestowed. It is not just taught. You can't put men in a classroom and say, this is how, no. Back then in traditions, in settings, men and boys, fathers used to go with the sons and go in the forest and stay there for 3 weeks. Come back and a young boy knows how to cook for themselves, they know how to hunt, they know how to protect themselves. And therefore, with that absence, you can see the masculinity is not being bestowed. And therefore, the ladies are really struggling. I've trained quite a number. I've done a lot of events for young people. And the most recent one I did was, I will not mention names, but almost 90% of the audience were single ladies.
And I was actually coming to that.
Yes.
Because even the former president, Uhuru Kenyatta, was saying there's a huge influx of single mothers really out here. And we take a look at Gita, what he's really talking about. The kind of impact this has even on how, when you're growing up, in modeling, these boys as well as even the girls, what they see around them, and just partake the kind of roles. You'd find in some households, like when I was starting, I was saying how right now the Gen Z right now would say, there's no way I come back and I'll also cook for you. This is someone who hasn't yet gotten into that whole marriage institution. Do you foresee a situation where in the near future, those right now the baby boomers are here, who are actually being raised up by most of the single ladies, as well as getting that kind of experience of around them, they don't really have someone to model them to be the boy. What do you see really in the near future on this?
Well, it's unfortunate because, like Kate has said, it is easier to see than to hear. You go to a class and somebody is teaching. When a teacher just teaches without aids, sometimes you don't hold much. But anyone who teaches with aids, you can catch up maybe even to 50% or 60% because you can be able to identify. So like now when people model, those things stays in you. You know your place. And you know what men were doing or women or what was happening then, people were creating boundaries unknowingly. You see, you can create boundaries that these are the roles of women, even without saying. You see, you don't say that I'm the one who goes hunting. It just comes automatically that men will go hunt, come and bring the meat, yeah? And women knew that their work was probably to go to the kitchen, light the fire, cook whatever need to be cooked. But whatever need to be roasted, men knew that was their role. So those things, the boundary was created, naturally. But unfortunately nowadays, all those things, they seem like they have been cleared. Whereby, for example, men was known for power. You're the one to protect the family. That was so clear. You're the one to close the doors and all those things. But now the man of today, he's coming back home at 3. Hata mama ndio anamfungulia. By that time, when you're coming back, the thugs have already come, they have stolen the things and they have already gone. That's the time you're coming home. Then you come home drunk. So who was modeling for your sons all this time? The woman came home, she cooked, she did, then you're coming home late. So there is this problem of people not really knowing their role. They don't seem to know what they're supposed to be doing. And so this is what is messing the society. And I don't think things are even going to get better unless we intentionally decide to make them better. Because now here you are, you're a man, yes, you're working, I'm working, but then we come home, it's you want your lady even to pay the rent. She's paying the rent, she's buying the food, she's doing 1, 2, or basically there are no clear roles. So now, if there are no clear roles, if I'm paying the rent, if I'm buying the food, if I'm paying the school fees, then why should I cook for you? You see, why should I cook for you? Because at the end of the day, these roles are just, they are intertwined. So we need to be very, very clear on what exactly we need to do. And these are supposed to be discussed really at the premarital. And I think now the generations, we really have to intentionally come out and teach our people. As much as we are being westernized, because you see, the world has become a global village. It is true. We are picking so much from the West. It is true. But sometimes, you pick, but then you should also come back and look at what you've picked and start, structuring, start setting them up. But now
analyzing if it actually works right here.
Precisely. So we are picking everything from the West. We bring them and you want them to work for us. You see, you want to bring Uzungu thing and then you want it to work in Africa or in our culture. And yet, We still want to embrace, for example, like right now, we are saying only Maasais are still holding their cultures. And we are kind of like really looking at them and kind of envying them. Why are we doing that? You know?
Right. And there are a couple of comments here, people supporting your sentiments. Mikael Nyingi says, are there, by the way, the question of the day was, should we rethink our traditional roles? And should we rethink the whole traditional roles of man and woman in a marriage? Mikael Nyingi says, there, by the way, we are still fully traditional. Some people want to avoid their responsibilities when it's their turn. Ask these questions. Who should provide? Who should protect? Who should be the head? Who should pay on a date? etc. We'll be getting Keith as well as telling us on that. Sylvia Kihara says, marriage and religion are two things that doesn't revolve. The culture doesn't change. If you happen to change them, then don't call them marriage or religion. Changes defile them. Okay. Wambua Ndeto, traditional marriages are the best because it involves families and clans. Okay, that is a whole mix-up on his comment. Sam G. Ngige, traditional all the way. If everyone plays his or her role in the family, marriage exists. Keep talking to us at TV47KE on Facebook. We've posted that question there. Should we rethink the traditional roles between a man and a woman? You can comment there. Or better yet, actually, you can call us live, 0795 045 864. And kindly do this. When you call us live, mute your TV or just have it off and be as audible enough. Tell us where you're calling us from and ask probably a question or give us a comment on this conversation that we are having. TV47 News on X. And just continue sampling this. So, Kate, there was a whole study by Washington University back in 2013 showing, so according to the research and the people they had talked to, they found that couples who had and who are seeking the whole traditional kind of roles in the marriage were actually happier compared to those who sought the whole equality in the roles. What do you think of this kind of study?
Back then, maybe context, earlier generations went through World War. And there's what adversity does to your work ethic and to your value system. It is said that hard times produce strong people. Strong people produce good times produce weak people, and then weak people go back to hard times. And therefore, in the context where people have gone through adversity and poverty and all these difficult points.
Okay.
You have to say something, yeah.
Yes, we have a caller.
Yes.
From Embu, Newton. Hold on to that bit. We'll be getting back to you.
Yeah.
Newton, kutoka Embu, habari asubuhi. Newton, kutoka Embu, habari asubuhi. Newton, kama bado uko hapo, habari asubuhi. Okay, Newton is jaribu tena kutupigia 0795045864 is our number. When you're calling us, switch off your TV and also mute. Si lazima ujisikie, by the way. Mute TV, then you talk to us vizuri sana. Yes, sorry for interrupting you.
So it's okay, thank you. So as I was saying that the context of marriages earlier were birthed in positions of pain and poverty and struggle. And with that, people had very deep value systems that made them value the relationship over the materials. Now, as the hard times produce the strong people produce good times. And in those good times, people now began taking things for granted, taking each other for granted. And so something that people back then used to struggle to have, in this context, people have it very easily. And so convenience became more, people started living by convenience and not conviction. Mm-hmm. And with that, I can replace you anytime and I can afford to live by my own. And so you begin to see that the relationships are not as strong as they used to be, mm-hmm. because I could say that back then people had a covenant kind of relationship. And in covenant, I mean, families used to get into a covenant. Let's say, a farming community and a community that rears cattle, when they get into a covenant, it means that when we, as the farmers of keeping plants,
okay.
when it's a drought, it's the season of drought, mm-hmm. we will come and feed on your cattle. And in the vice versa, the days that your herd is dying, you will come and we get to feed on what we've planted. And so that was the nature of a covenant. And the covenant is out to cancel out weaknesses. Now, that was in the context of poverty and pain. Now it has become contractual, where what is in it for me? I am empowered, I know my rights, I've gone to school, and therefore we are equal partners in it. And so the moment nothing is working for me, I'm out of it. So you can see that relationships are now no more transactional, where I'm in it for what I can get, and if I don't get it, I'm out of it. So that's something I could say. The reason why relationship back then worked better was people had covenant and conviction-minded type of approach to marriages and relationships.
And
yes.
you take a look at how these conversations are changing. Both the man and the woman at this point, we talk about right now, even the whole Gen Z is trying to really get into this whole space. Both of them are empowered, both of them are really have gone to school. And having both of them now, for this study saying that for those who are seeking a traditional kind of setup of roles, are actually happier than those who have and are seeking the equality in roles. As someone who actually now, talks one-on-one with couples of different, ages, do you agree with this kind of a study?
Well, I think not, because it is one thing to be, is another thing to seek to be traditional. Those people were traditional. They didn't seek to be. They were traditional. So you see now you'll be practicing what other people practiced out of. This was already in them.
Yeah.
It was innate. But now you're trying to borrow. The same way we are trying to borrow Western things. It's the same way that you're Gen Z and you're trying to borrow their traditions. The thing is, self-awareness is very key. You need to know yourself. You're a man. You shall forever be a man. I am a woman. I shall forever be a woman, And
actually, now the fact that you bring that up, because you'd find a number of the Gen Zs have been brought up in urban centers, and they have little to very minimal touch. You ask someone, "Ushago ni wapi?" Ni hapa Buruburu. But at the end of the day, if they actually, track somewhere around mahali kwenye Kimincha huko, but they don't have a touch to their traditional self. They don't really know this is how things are done, this is how things should be done. Around the urban centers, they've seen how maybe roles are done in a different kind of way. Do you think that is a whole other factor?
Yes, it is, but I don't think that's a big deal. We don't even need to start going traditional. We just need to seek to do that which is right. You to be aware that you're a man, I am a woman, we are married. There are some automatic role. For example, you'll never conceive. It's me to conceive, meaning that I'm the one to breastfeed. If a house girl comes into the home, most of the time it's the woman who should be in charge because of 1, 2. There are some areas that, just like I said, even if you got twins, a boy and a girl, automatically you realize the boy starts going toward the boyish thing, or the girl will start going to the feminine side. And so I don't think it is a big deal us trying to go traditional. This issue of people calling marriage partnership, it's a whole clear misinterpretation. Because if you think about the partnership of a company, surely what is that? When you start thinking of marriage as partnership, then you're bound to fail, because it will be like equal roles. You do, I do. You bring, this partnership is whether if I bring 60% and you bring 40%, it already means that I am the majority shareholder. Kwa hivyo mimi ndio kusema. You see? And so if you go with that whole idea of mimi ndio kusema, I think you're likely to have a problem. We need to go back to the root where we consider premarital counseling. We get to understand what is this thing that we are getting ourselves into. Because if you think about children coming on board, children are not like a property. I think we are so much money-oriented, material-oriented, that we are interpreting this marriage from the concept of property or materials. And this is where we are going wrong. We need to know exactly what marriage is all about, why we are marrying, where we are getting married, where are we getting married in the first place.
So now, having that whole understanding, do questions like, at the end of the day... Right, I think we... do you have a caller?
Yes, we have
Esther from... Esther kutoka wapi? Hello, Esther. Okay. Hiyo ni kama credit imeisha. Right, so I was asking, now the fact that we understand what you're telling us, how marriage really works, do you now get kind of questions that at the end of the day, so between a man and a woman, who bears the biggest burden on these roles? Because growing up, you'd rarely even see the man in the house. Atatoka and atafute. The roles that this man plays isn't really seen, visually seen in the house. The results come really later. Things are sorted, but you don't really see them firsthand. But then for the woman, you see them. When you wake up, the mother has prepared, the breakfast and everything. Everything is clean. You actually see what the woman is doing in the house. So at the end of the day, as a counseling psychologist tells us, who really bears the biggest role in a marriage between the man and the woman?
I would say both do, because you see, like the fact that a house girl has cleaned the clothes, na ameziosha, you can see them on the hanging line, she cleaned the house, doesn't mean that you who went to the office didn't do your work, because at the end of the day, you must be able to make money that will actually be able to pay for these particular services. So it's just that the woman's role seems to be a bit more visible, but the fact that your roles don't seem to be visible, we have to consider there's things that are visible and some are invisible. Sometimes you bury for you to be able to realize harvest, you must bury seeds. When you bury them, at one point they look like they are dead, like there is nothing really coming up. But at one point you'll be like, wow. They'll be all over and you'll be able to enjoy a bumper harvest. So the fact that the woman was able to clean the house, set up the breakfast, that is just a part of the role, really. But you'll go to the office, who quantify that particular money that now you have gone to, to make, because this one look more like it is more quantifiable because it is visible. But in actual sense, even you who went to the office, it really, it shows at the end of the day, because that breakfast that was set up, who bought it? How did it come to be into the house?
But Kev, is there a perfect balance in these roles? Because right now, for the Joneses, when they're growing up, they saw the mom doing all this, aliamka, and probably they didn't even find the dad in the house. The mom cooked, cleaned, visible kind of roles in the house. And then the father wasn't really there. Right, let's pick this call first. Who am I speaking to? Hello, TV47, who am I speaking to?
Hello, my name is Esther from Limuru.
Esther, habari asubuhi?
Na mzuri sana.
Limuru ni baridi ama ni jua imetokea?
Huko kuna baridi sana na mvua.
Pole sana. Huko Nairobi ni jua tu. Tuambie, do you have a question for us ama ni maoni unataka kutupatia?
I was listening to your conversation and sometimes I wonder why is the woman peke yake ndiye anaambiwa yeye ndiye atashikilia ndoa, and we expect so much from the woman, yet we are also trying to balance. I want to be that traditional wife, and at the same time, the modern kind of life hainiallow pia nikuwe so much traditional, So my husband expects me to behave like a traditional woman, but my career, my time, the kids, I'm also trying to balance all these things and become a wife. So why do they really, and sometimes inatuumizanga and inatuweka in a traumatic situation, because you wonder, I have a job that I have also to do at the end of the day.
Okay.
But mbona wana expect mimi nikue everything?
And Esther, because before your call, it was something that we were discussing here, the perfect balance in a marriage, the roles that the man and the wife have. Growing up, a lot of people would see the mother have visible roles around the house, clean and cook, and the kind of visible roles. Unlike the father, won't really be present here. Do you think, this kind of conversations have changed?
It has changed, although I feel that men should also help us. If we can't afford a house girl, like for me, I don't have a house girl, and I'm expecting by the time I get home, I get to my house at around 9-10, I expect him at least akuwe amenisaidia kupikia watoto, If I'm working on Saturdays and Sundays weekend, at least nisaidie pia kufua, kwa hii ndoa pamoja ama ni kusaidiana.
Okay.
So mzigo tu kwangu, mimi naangalia watoto, nafua, napika. Haya, nikitoka kazi I need to angalia mzee wangu anakaa aje,
Okay.
We are running crazy. Nakufa huku nje.
And Esther, before ukate him, I can also have the guests also chime in and ask probably you a couple of questions. Gita and Keith?
Ladies first.
Yeah. Yeah, so now Esther, how do you expect your husband to assist you?
At least let's balance. You know, ukiona nimelemewa sijefika nyumbani, nipikie, nisaidie kupika. Hata nikifika pale nyumbani, usikae pale TV una watch TV. Yeah. And sometimes hata labda una chat na tu side chicks pale. Hiyo bibi yako amechoka, amekuwa na long day. Wewe una entertain side chick, bibi yako anakatakata tu pale vitunguu akilia.
Well, I think that is quite okay. Your argument is right, but I would pray that you don't behave like a traditional woman. Just be the woman that you are. Because the problem that we are having right now is trying to be like, don't try to be like, cheza kama wewe, you know? Because when you play like you don't struggle in life. Yeah. And it is true, I am also for the idea that we should come in and try to assist each other, because what is rendering men useless, especially after the jobs have gone, is when you have no job and yet you cannot still help in house chores. So this is actually really bringing problems in family, whereby a man now maybe you have lost your job for some months, for a year or two, but now since you could not do those jobs, you still don't see like you're supposed to do them. So you stay in the house the whole day doing nothing. And that, of course, will bring conflict. So I would also ask our brothers to rise up, to rise up to the occasion. Don't be like the traditional man. Just be who you are. Don't say that my dad used to do. You're not your dad. You're who you are. These are your times. So just cheza tu kama wewe.
Yeah.
Right, thank you very much, Esther. Kutoka Limuru, salimia sana watu wa Limuru.
Nitawasalimia.
0795045864 is your number. You can throw in all those questions that you have and comments that you have. Mute your TV or just have it off and tell us where you're calling us from and be as audible as possible.
I don't like being ambushed.
And naona washaendelea na the whole conversation and just analyze what Esther is talking about. And there's something very interesting, Kate, that she's talked about. Having the balance of being a traditional, you're in a modern world, the society around you is very, very modern. But then you're expected by your partner to behave and act and take up the roles as someone, traditional. And she was speaking on behalf of, a huge number of women.
Very true.
But then it also flips even for the man. Because, this man knows as a traditional man the things that I shouldn't do or shouldn't say around the household. But then he's living in he's living in a modern world as well. Where do you and how do you strike that balance between being a modern man and taking up traditional kind of roles?
Thank you. To this conversation, I'd like to introduce this concept of heritage. Tradition and culture in and by itself is not negative. Where it becomes a negative is when you don't question a practice without asking the why. For example, if you grew up seeing your father go out and work the whole day, if you understand the why, you realize that this is our family, and therefore I am working to ensure that we all are comfortable. Okay? When you understand the why, it becomes heritage. Okay? So there's a lot of traditional practices that we've not questioned, and it's working against us. For example, if that question of going to the kitchen, back then, men used to go out and fend for the family, and then come back home to rest and rejuvenate to go back and fend for the family. Now, the economic system and the economic times don't allow the man to be the only one fending for the family. And therefore, the tradition of just expecting your wife to go to the kitchen and as you sit and watch TV, that worked for our fathers and it won't work now. The heritage that should be passed on from that kind of culture back then should be that men work hard to protect their families. That's heritage. Tradition is whether or not my wife worked till 12 a.m., it is her responsibility to ensure that I'm fed. That is not tradition, negative tradition, and it shouldn't be passed on. And with the Gen Zs, it won't work. Because now Gen Zs, both of them have gone to school and they've empowered, they've gone to, yes.
Allow me to take this call. Hold that thought. We'll be getting back to you later. Christopher kutoka Kawangware, habari asubuhi.
Salama sana, habari asubuhi.
Watu wa Kawangware mnaendeleaje?
Tuko salama.
Yes, karibu sana to TV47.
Ni mvua tu kidogo.
Oh, kuna mvua huko Kawangware?
Kidogo tu, manyunyo.
Oh, haya, sawa. Karibu sana to our conversation. Tunaongelea maneno ya roles ya men and women and tunauliza should we rethink hizi traditional roles za men and women. Uko na swali ya kuongezea ama uko na maoni?
Uko na maoni? You see now the world is dynamic, may change. Yes, na tukieka like traditionally I think haiwezi fanya kazi kwa sababu sasa hii unaona almost as husbands and our fellow men kila mtu anafaa akwe na role yake. Kama unaona unaweza kuwa wewe ni mwanaume na saa nyingine kazi hakuna,
okay,
hawezi wacha mama ameenda kazi alafu akirudi jioni unapata vyombo bado, nyumba bado, viti, watoto bado jaoshwa. Okay. So mimi kwa maoni yangu naona tu tunafaa tusaidiane. Kama moja ametoka, you just do whatever you can see can be done. Like ufanye kitu yenye mtu akirudi ingekuwa ni wewe umeachwa hapo, you just feel okay. So sioni like huyu mtu afanye hii, huyu mwingine afanye hii, hiyo could discriminate roles. Sioni kama ni mzuri, kila mtu afanye tu ile yanaweza.
So Chris, umeoa ama bado hujaingia?
Mimi nimeoa.
Umeoa?
Yes, hata we are speaking. Mimi niko kwa nyumba, I'll make sure nimetengeneza nyumba, watoto wameoga, so mama akirudi
okay,
at least apate kama nimempunguzia kazi. Na mimi nikitoka kesho, juu kazi ya kila siku. Nikitoka kesho na yeye ako atafanya the same. Na tukitoka wote turudi jioni na tulikuwa tumetoka wote. Tukifika kila mtu anashikilia penye anaweza. Huyu atashika watoto, mimi nitaka vyombo, ninge jikoni, hivyo tumalize haraka. Lakini tukisema kila mtu na kazi yake, haiwezi fanyika, itakuwa ngumu.
So jioni akifika anapata ushapika ama mnasaidiana wewe kupika ugali
bila nimeshinda kwa nyumba, kama nilikuwa nimeshinda kwa nyumba, hivi ngoja arudi nione anaingia kwa jikoni, aoshe vyombo, apike na nimekaa hapo. At least nitafanya kitu ati nipunguze hiyo kazi. Na kama mimi nimetoka and then nitarudi apate kama amefanya hizo. So ni kushare tu. Nifanye hii, nifanye hizi, kazi ya ishi haraka. Lakini ukisema uwezi washa watoto, uwezi upika, unaona itakuwa ngumu.
Sawa. Asante sana Christopher, salimia sana watu wa Kawangware, waambie endelee kututazama.
Asante.
0795045864 numbers are open. Keep talking to us and all those questions that you have and feedback kama ni maoni. Also on our Facebook page at TV47KE, we've posted this question: should we rethink the roles of a man and a woman in a marriage? Head there and comment. I'll be taking a look at them as you continue. So Keith, before he called, you were finishing up on your point, so that I also let Gitau to respond to what Christopher was saying.
Yes, so I was talking about heritage and tradition. I would say in all the cultures, in all the tribes, there are things that we've done that worked for us and supported our families. But there are things that we also, if we hold on to them, they'll actually work to the detriment of our families. And I'd like to give the analogy that tradition is like a sugar cane. There are things that if you chew it, there are things that will add value, and there are things that you ought to leave behind. So you don't throw away totally the whole piece because of some things that don't work. So I would say the things that work, you'd call that heritage. And the things that don't work, which you can get to pick one by one, what you're saying earlier, that you get to sift and say, hey, this one was good, this one was not. So that is heritage. And to this, I'd like to introduce the conversation of empire and kingdom. Back in the World War, one of the things that the governments used to do to enable or to encourage the soldiers to work hard was to ensure that they're married. And they go with a photo of their family and spouse, and that's why. And especially if they're expecting a child, a soldier was encouraged to put it in their pocket, so that every time that they're fighting, they look and say, you know what, I am fighting for these people.
For the family,
Okay? So while in the battlefield, they're fighting for the empire, but protecting their kingdom. Every man has a kingdom, and his kingdom is his personal family. And so in the modern times, the empire is the marketplace. That the man carries greater responsibility to ensure that he succeeds in the empire by succeeding in the marketplace so that he can have the money to protect his kingdom.
Right.
So his designation is ensure that the family is doing well in the empire. But the woman, the kingdom, the family is her kingdom. So why is this important? Designation. A good marriage is teamwork. And I like what the gentleman said, that he does not feel less of a man by washing the children and taking care of the family, because when you're asking earlier who takes greater responsibility, the man. Because he is responsible for starting this family unit. He's the one who proposed to the lady. He's the one who gave the seed that conceived and brought in the children. So he is responsible. Overall responsibility falls on the man.
Interesting.
So he's responsible for both the empire and the kingdom. But in terms of designation, it is his responsibility to ensure that the family is doing well in the marketplace.
Okay.
And the lady to take care of the family. However, she can support in terms of bringing in something from the empire, in terms of the marketplace, and he too can support in the kingdom by ensuring that the children are okay. Above all else, at the end of this all is that we all get to win. We are working for our family. And therefore, I don't feel less of a man by washing the dishes, because after all, it is still my kingdom, it's still our empire. Yes.
Max J on Facebook seems to disagree, says women can adopt men's roles, but no man should ever involve himself in women's roles. So you have about 5 minutes to wrap up this whole conversation. So even as you chime in what Christoph was really saying, the men here and a couple of women who the whole conversation really has, and they're saying the whole conversation has changed. And there's one that was really very interesting. I think one of them, yes, the only thing we should rethink is doing away with marriage itself. It's a form of colonialism to a man. Must there be marriages? With God, it's a must. That's according to Mythica John. So that's what men out here are saying.
Well, it's not a must if you don't think it is a must. However, I think marriage is a very good thing anyway. It's something that will make your life comfortable. Your partnership is good, because you see, like even for business, if you want TV47 to be very powerful, there are some companies that you'll merge with, and they can make you greater. They can push you to greater height. And so you realize that you as a man, if you didn't marry and I didn't get married, and probably even in this case, we don't get children, it means that the world will come to an end at one point. And so for me, I don't really support that. I think marriage is very, very key. She should not be afraid of responsibility. Let us not talk so much about traditions, because even what we are living today will be traditions of our children tomorrow. So what you're supposed to be doing is setting very good examples in what we are doing, so that our children have something to pick from. And then again, why wouldn't we share responsibility? That same food you don't want to cook, you shall eat. So if you talk about tradition, don't just say that the woman should be the traditional woman. Even you be the traditional man. And this is why we are having a problem of women saying, my money is my money, but your money should be our money. So now what will I be doing with my money in the meantime? Because for sure, I can go to work and still cook for you, wash your clothes, and not do all those things. But you bring all your money home. Then what will I be doing with my money in the meantime? And so this is what is likely to bring problem. So we should be able to see it as a couple. We share the responsibility. And of course, there are some responsibilities that are more ideal for you and not very ideal for me. Because just like what he said, even like now the children continue growing, you realize that there's something the father will be more likely to do than the mother, or the mother than the father. And so it is very, very important to look at our family and know that when we do well, we are actually winning as a team. It's a team winning, not just you or me. And when we go into divorce, we both lose, by the way. We both lose. So there is nobody who is going to gain. Okay, the main loser usually are the children, because you can go and have your girl, I can go and have my man. But whichever the case, we both lose. And so it is very, very important to know that even like in the office, we have different departments. And when all these departments work well, the whole company wins. But if one department decides not to work, then what happens? The company will have lost.
I think we have about like 2 minutes to wrap it up. Can get your final thoughts on the same. Can I take your thoughts as the final thoughts?
Yeah.
Then, okay, even as your final thoughts, and advice again to young people who are really trying to get into this conversation. Well, even how they were brought up, they saw the world in a whole different way, and they really want to get it because of what and how they were modeled. Your advice to this young men as well as women who really want to get into this space and wondering, and they still have the whole conversation of mimi siwezi ingia kitchen as a man, and even the lady saying apana, I won't also get, I want equal roles.
A good marriage is two servants in love. And by servant, I mean people who chose to serve without being compelled to do so.
Yeah.
A bad marriage is two slave masters in love. And therefore, everyone is looking for how much can I command the other person to do. Yeah. And therefore, the mindset of I'm in it for what I can get, that automatically makes you a slave master. Mm-hmm. When you think servanthood, then you realize that both the kingdom and the empire belongs to us. And when these two entities prosper, we all get to win. And therefore, I'd also advise them to be very careful of whose advice they're looking up to. Yeah. There's a lot of content going around. Mm-hmm. You started with an African proverb. Yeah. There's another one that says, when a man promises to give you a shirt, look at the one they're wearing.
I love that.
Okay? Uh-huh. When someone gives you marriage advice, study their own. Did it work? Has it failed? And therefore, my Gen Z brothers and sisters, be very careful of this podcast you're consuming. Yeah. Some of these things that are being shared is content for divorce material. Mm. Yeah. And it is your empire that will die if you listen to some of these things you're being told.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for having, and giving us this whole wise words. Jane Gitau, counseling psychologist, as well as Keith Nyambane, lead steward at STARTIMES, mentor, and generally a mentor, a musician, and all that. And for all your wise words, this is where we really have to wrap it up here. But this conversation continues on our digital